There's two things, or maybe three actually, things that I absolutely love, and I put. If someone asked me who I were in three, like in my hobbies in three different words, I would say video games number one, anime number two, and music would be number three. So video games, I've been playing all my life since the age of 4. There's nothing stopping that. No one can ever take that away from me. I had a pretty unhealthy obsession with video games growing up. I was the typical COD squeaker, playing, yelling. I actually got in trouble a couple times because I would play too late at night, and then my parents would get really, really mad at me. One funny story I had was I was playing with my friend Justin. We've been friends since 5th grade. We still talk like every day now. We were playing Call of Duty Black Ops 2. And in that game, there's these things called hunter-killer drones. And basically, they're like little drones that people throw out. And then it comes and it finds you and it kills you. And it scared me every single time. So every single time I die by it, I scream at the top of my lungs. So it was a Friday night. No, it was a school night, actually. School night. I was like, all right, Justin, I got to go to bed, man. It's late. We got school tomorrow. He goes, just one more, Michael. One more. Just one more. I'm like, okay, you got me. So I play one more. Get killed by a hunter-killer drone. Scream. Then this is from our friend Justin's perspective. He hears stomping, door slamming open, loud Vietnamese yelling, and it goes, Michael is offline. So basically what happened is my dad unplugged the PS3, threw it at me, took it, and left. And then I remember sleeping that night under the covers. I was like, just scared and just shaking and just shocked. And just like having that obsession over video games, learning how to balance it between school and just like responsibilities in general was like definitely a journey that I've been getting better at. And another thing that I love is anime. I grew up with Naruto. In my opinion, Naruto the best anime for me. Like most impacted, Naruto. I have a Naruto headband right here. I have like some other like Naruto merch everywhere. I grew up watching Naruto. I drew a lot of pictures of Naruto. I talked about Naruto with my friends. I watched Naruto getting older, and that was like kind of like what kind of opened the gates to anime for me. And it's now like since I've watched a lot of Naruto, I know how anime like the tropes of anime is and what makes a good anime, what doesn't make a good anime. And I've just been obsessed over it. I think my anime list is like huge. I've watched, and I'm always looking forward to the newest anime, the upcoming anime. The new movies. I've read a couple manga, and just like talking to animes with friends, it's just so fun to me because there's no such thing as like, in my opinion, there's no such thing as a casual anime watcher. There's no such thing. You're like, yeah, I watch a couple episodes, and if someone talks about it, I don't want to talk about it. Like if you're an anime watcher and someone talks about the anime, you'd be like, bro, that's like, that's how you make friendships, in my opinion. Like good, solid friendships, solid connections. Is video games and anime. So if you love anime, you love the same anime, and you want to talk about it with me, that's how we become friends instantly. And the third one is music. So I've been playing piano since the age of 4, and I put literally blood, sweat, and tears on the piano. Blood, interesting story. Playing the piano, the cover fell on my fingers, broke 3 of my fingernails, and I was like crying. I was like, oh, it hurts. I'm like, Mom, I'm hurt. She goes, are you okay now? I'm like, yeah, kind of. Keep practicing. I'm like, okay. And so I would keep practicing. I would cry because it would be too much. I'd get bored. Sweat because, I played a lot. And since playing piano and have music integrated in my life for that long, I grew up exploring a lot of music. For me, my first thing that I really got into was EDM. So, Skrillex, Tiesto, Avicii. In middle school, dubstep was a huge thing for me. I listened to dubstep everywhere. I had a Facebook group with my friends called the Dubsteppers, and we would send in like music and tag like the drops of each one, and we'd be like, oh yeah, yo, this drop is sick. Oh bro, you should listen. I got new ones, and we would talk about it in school. And and so after middle school, going to high school, I of course joined choir. Never sang the day before, like that choir. So when I joined choir, I fell in love with singing instantly. And because of that, I decided to pursue music education in college. And that's been where my passion is, teaching people, inspiring people through music. If you're in my car, there's always music playing. I do not start the car, or do not move the car, or put it away from brake until something's playing. I'm either listening to music. Sometimes I'm just thinking in my head. So a melody will pop up. I'm like, oh, sweet, I can make like a really cool song with this. I learned how to beatbox, so I can make music anywhere I want. And so music is just so... it's such a big world with so many subcategories that I feel like everyone in any certain aspect could. Music. That's why I love it.
Lore. I will obsess about lore and like storylines in games. But then I will also get into tactics. If there is like for example, going back to chess, there's just so many different moves you can play, and you have to be able to anticipate that. So puzzles. So I will obsess on what is the best strategy? What is the best, what target point am I looking for? How can I make this as efficient as possible? And then with lore, it's like, with Lord of the Rings, like there's so much of it. D&D, so much of it. WoW, I don't know too much about WoW lore, but it's fascinating what I have seen. So I will just sit there and be like mapping out the story, or just playing the movie almost in my head.
Wow. Probably a lot of my answers are going to be revolved around anime and StarCraft 2. Those are the two things. Anime. So the way I geek out on anime is really funny. So I'll find one anime, binge watch that into oblivion, and then geek out about that and obsess over that for about a month or two, and then just drop anime for the next 3 months. And then I remember that I have a Crunchyroll subscription and I'm paying a lot of money for it. And then it's just a never-ending cycle. But each time it's like one more anime. So right now I'm on my 4th anime of the cycle. So yeah, and for those curious, the anime I just finished, ReZero, it's the one. Yes, I'm on Team Room. Yeah, and the second things I also geek out over would be StarCraft 2. I've been playing about it since 2015, as I've said in the past. And for my 21st birthday, a lot of people will go out and like drink or go to clubs or just, adult things. For me, I live in Fort Worth. I managed to negotiate with my family to fly me out to Colorado, to Denver, to go play at a StarCraft event for my 21st birthday. And I got a lot of jokes about that. It was Cheesadelphia 19. I just remember the grand finals was on my birthday on Sunday, July 29th. And then I played against some teammates who were actual professionals, so it was very, very one-sided. Very, very one-sided.
So the big thing that I geek out about is Harry Potter. It is my favorite thing. I read the books every year. It is always something that if someone's talking about it, I'm like jumping in to talk about it or ask what people's houses are or dress up as a Hogwarts student with my Hufflepuff robes on every year for Halloween. And it's just always something that I go back to. I even got myself a little tattoo about it because I just love it so much. And then the other thing that I really geek out about is a podcast that I listen to called My Favorite Murder. It is something that is more recent that I have loved, and as soon as I started listening to it, it was just like the most fun, and I got as many other people to listen to it as I could so I could talk about it with people all the time. And it's just really fun to like see people in the wild that also listen to it and have like their SSDGM stuff on their cars, or just talking about it and stuff with people, even from all over the world. Like I've made friends through listening to this podcast from different countries, and I'm in Snapchat groups and Discord groups with them, and like we talk about the things that we like outside of the podcast, but the podcast is what brought us together.
So I really geek out over mainly anime and video games, but I think the anime I really geek over is Yu Yu Hakusho. It's a super old anime. It's way before my time, but my girlfriend showed it to me and I just fell in love with it instantly. I was just like, man, I really love Yusuke. I love Kuwabara. I love all these characters. And it's just, yeah, it's just, I love that show. Just holds a very close, it's very close to me.
I am actually obsessed with sharks. I don't know exactly like how it started, but it was probably around age 9 or 10 that I just really started like what's that word? I don't know. That's not a word. Delving myself into like all these kinds of shark facts and learning more about them. And I had like a collection of probably 8 or 9 like books that just had like pictures of every different kind of shark that you can think of. And so I would just like soak that up into my brain, so that's all I was thinking about all the time. And then so we would go out to the coast and go like deep sea fishing every year, and so every time that we did that, I would just hope that we would catch a shark so I could see one in real life. And then every time that we go to an aquarium, I'm just like straight to the sharks. Like, I don't care about all the little fish. Just let me see the sharks.
Well, I gotta say, currently, the games that I obsess over are not necessarily the most like. They're not very fun for me because I like to play. Recently, I've liked to play all the military sim games. So it's like Tarkov, Squad, a little bit of like some of the espionage games. So I'll play Metal Gear Solid 5 every once in a while, and that's usually how I kind of break the mold, and I try to get away from these stressful games like Tarkov because it's just constant like listening, and that's what I obsess over right now, is just kind of like figuring out the data behind each gun and like how they perform and stuff like that. But if it's not those games, it's probably gonna be games that I usually go back to every once in a while. It's usually Bethesda games, honestly. And I'll usually obsess over those like every once in a while. Like I obsess over Skyrim, playing some of the mod expansions and the campaign mods. And those are a good time for me. But other than that, another thing that I obsess over is definitely Minecraft. I'm about to obsess over it quite a bit because of the new Cave in Hills update. Oh man, it's gonna be a pretty good update actually. Wait, is it already out? I'm unsure. But yeah, those are the games that I like to obsess over.
Well, one of the things that I like geeking out about is just like older like video game stuff. So it's like stuff like I play a lot of games that are like just older than I am. Like even right now, like over on my shelf, I have a bunch of like game consoles that are like way older than me. So I have a Japanese Super Nintendo. I have a Super Famicom ready. I don't have any cartridges for it, but like I like older stuff. What like which it kind of leads into like another thing I geek out. I just like older technology in general and how like more analog things. So I've been getting records. So getting more records of like older albums. So see what I can find like at thrift stores or even like newer stuff, because I know there's a bunch of game companies releasing like vinyls of their soundtracks. So I've been collecting a lot of those as well. So the older like analog stuff is like starting to interest me more and more. And like even just recently, like I don't know, you personally would categorize like the Wii, for example, but I've been messing around with my Wii. I like soft modded it, so like getting to tinker stuff like that is like stuff I like geeking out over. Even though it can be frustrating sometimes, but like it's really fun just to have a collection and stuff like that.
Probably not right now, but there was a time in my life that games were something that I really geeked out about. I think since Harvey has been here, that pull to video games just hasn't been there because of time and energy, right? And when I would have the time to do that is when we got to catch up on a lot of other stuff that we have to do as functioning adults. And so that's really fallen aside for me, but games and specifically like RPG games have been what I have geeked out about in that gaming world, right? Yeah, so that's one. I think from a sports standpoint, there are two things that we geek out about, or that I geek out about with my family. One is baseball. We geek out about baseball. Big Texas Rangers fan since we've been here in DFW for 11 years now. But we're also Padres fans. Christine grew up in San Diego, and so and went to college in San Diego, and so we've always been like, that's been my NL team in support of her. But I grew up in a podunk, really rural area, so I never had a professional sports team to get around. So that's something that I've kind of geeked out about now that we are in closer proximity to it. And tennis, I really enjoy watching and have gotten back into playing tennis. And then the last thing, I like building things. I like making things. I like getting in there and I like tools and getting into a project where I get to use my own hands to take something from a vision into a final product, whether it's something small and goofy, or if it's like building a carport or redoing part of the house. Like I really enjoy that, and I tend to geek out about things like tools and woodworking.
So it's kind of funny you say that, because it does kind of have to do with FIFA. I'm big into like building hybrids in like FIFA, like Ultimate Team, because the way chemistry works, I don't know if you're familiar with it at all, but like the way it works is like you can get people chemistry by if they're like in the same like nationality. So like Portuguese people can link with Portuguese people. So like I'm super fascinated about like people who are like different nationalities and like linking them together. So I have a really weird knowledge of like everybody's nationality and like how they link together. And then like NBA stats too, like that's kind of funny that your brother does that, because I'm really into the NBA and like doing that kind of stuff too. So I would say either FIFA, just like random stats about FIFA, and or NBA stuff.
So one big thing that I geek out about that my boyfriend absolutely hates is this game that I got into recently called Akatsuki Blitzcamp. And I'm really into it just because I think it's just a unique story plot that got implemented in a fighting game style. I thought this would be something completely different than what I was getting into. I don't want to go into it because it's kind of inappropriate. And I feel like it's not safe to say, you know, in a public school setting, but it's a really good game. I love the characters. Music is great. And every time I see any sort of art for it, I geek out and I'm like, guys, look at this picture. And they're like, Cindy, shut up. And another thing I geek out for is this anime One Piece. I'm pretty sure you've heard of it. I'm pretty sure people have heard of it. It's like my childhood anime. It holds a special place in my heart because it taught me a lot of the morals that I go by now. And there hasn't been an anime that's been able to do that to me for a while. And I look forward to seeing any sort of art, any sort of like episode. I keep up with everything and I want to go. I love it.
I really geek out about football. Whenever I start talking about football, I feel like the conversation can last hours, which is really unfortunate because during all COVID, it's hard to interact with people the same way. So I feel like I'm missing out on that interaction. I'm jonesing for some football talk with another person. You know, of course, there's video games too. Like, you know, we start talking about like the right video game, I can get on a tangent about it, like World of Warcraft. Love talking and playing World of Warcraft with people. But football is the thing that I will just throw numbers out, and I just love the back and forth.
I would say sports. It's a very broad category. I always wanted to go into sports analyst as a kid because I'm like, if I can't play sports as an athlete, I'm definitely going to make a career out of it. Now that I'm going to law school, that's a little bit different, but I'm thinking about going to law administration for sports. So that would be really cool. And my favorite sport is football, but you know, soccer, football in the rest of the world. It's probably my second favorite. And just growing up, I always played those two sports nonstop. So then I watched them and I idolized some of those like athletes as a kid. And that leads to like a fixation on, you know, statistics for me. Some kids You know, they fixate on like the activity. For me, it was more like this guy's putting up numbers, and I could recite to you the starting five from like every single Spurs team from probably 2005 till 2012, and since then it's fluctuated a lot, and I haven't been as focused on it, but for real, that's definitely what I geek about is sports statistics.
I geek out about a lot of stuff. So it's a really hard question to single in on things. I think the first thing is like pretty much any type of game. Like I subscribe to GameFly, so I'm playing literally as many games as I possibly can, all the time. I think something that I think is really interesting that I don't partake in anymore because I don't have the time to do it is people who break games with like cheese strats and stuff like that. I think that's really hilarious, and I like to geek out and talk about that kind of stuff, even in games that I don't know anything about. Like you and I do that once in a while. Outside of that, I geek out a lot about comics. I'm pretty up to date on most DC and Marvel comics. And then in like a really random aside, I like sports, but I think the off season in sports is the most interesting thing. So my friends get really annoyed with me because during like the NFL and NBA off season and the MLB off season, I'm constantly texting them like, oh, so and so might sign this person, and then they might sign this person, and this is how they're going to build a team, and this is what kind of offense they're going to run because of this is going to be their players. So I get really geeked out about that to the point where like I play Madden and I'll do the franchise mode, but I won't like I'll do a fantasy draft to build a team like 20 times until I get the team that I want, that I'm satisfied with, and then I'll start playing. So I think that like team building and like strategy aspect of sports is really like probably the thing that I geek out about the most, which is like a really random thing.
Oh man, can I get props for this? All right, 1 second. It's all about dramatic effect. Okay. Anyway, this game sucked. Okay, just to be clear, anyone who's watching, Fallout 76 was garbage. Okay, but the Fallout series, it's my baby. I love that game. I played Fallout New Vegas when I was 12, and ever since then, I've loved the Fallout series. Fallout 4 was great. So it's underrated or overrated by a lot, but anyway, not a point. The next would be the Assassin's Creed series, Assassin's Creed 3 being my favorite. I have a great story for that, but I won't really get into it. Those would be the two like biggest games I obsess over, except the Red Dead Redemption series. So good. So good. I love the whole Western aesthetic, and I think right now, in my opinion, the best two companies for living up to the hype are Valve and Rockstar, because they have both did amazing jobs with these like decade-long waits for sequels. And, anyway, but those would be what I obsess over.
So I geek out about a lot of different stuff. I guess probably the main thing that I geek out about is like stories, like people's stories. Stories in video games, stories in movies and TV shows. Like, whenever we're watching a TV show or a movie, my wife and I have my phone out and I'm looking up backstory stuff. I see something and it's like, ooh, what's that? And I'll go down a rabbit hole later on, like through the different fan wikis and all that kind of stuff, just figuring out what it is, what it's based on, what it was connected to, what is the symbolism, what does the imagery mean. Like, I love that kind of stuff so much. I remember talking to some folks in the program recently about when World of Warcraft first came out, and me and my buddies were playing it. They were all like, "Hey, let's get gear and let's go do end game stuff." And I was like, "Ooh, what is that statue? What does the plate say on that statue? And Anduin Lothar, who is he? Why is he pointing a sword at Blackrock Mountain?" Like, I just used to geek out about that kind of stuff, like even in video games. Like, that's why, like a big reason that the game that I love more than maybe any other game, I think it's going to get overtaken soon, but Divinity Original Sin 2 is just so rich in stories and storytelling. But Baldur's Gate 3 early access just came out, and that game is amazing so far. Really buggy because it's early access, but again, it's about the stories. It's about the slowly unraveling what makes the characters the way they are, what makes them tick, why they're acting the way they are, what is their character motivation. I think that's really true for people as well. I love finding out where people are from and where they're going, and why that, what's in the middle of that line, like where they're from, where they're going, what's in the middle, that, and that's where they are right now. But like figuring out, like there's a quote from an old Avengers comic that I love. I look back at who I was and understand who I have become, and that's storytelling to me in a personal way, but like from a person-to-person point of view. I love that kind of stuff too. So like stories is a big thing. That's why I love D&D. That's why I love WoW. That's why I love Destiny. Destiny gets a lot of crap as a game, but I love Destiny. They do a bad job of getting the lore out there, but the lore in Destiny is some of the best lore in the world. So yeah, I would say stories. In a video game sense, it's a lore thing. Like I'm a huge lore nerd, but stories, definitely stories.